Welcome back to another video, and this is my end of the year 2025 eyeshadow palette ranking. Welcome back, and I think this is one of the most anticipated moments of the year. So we are ranking the eyeshadow palettes that I tried during this year. Bit of like caveats before we go into the ranking itself. I have already done my end of the year eyeshadow palette declutter, so any palettes that were decluttered during the declutter and that were bought that I tried during this year. There are some palettes that I bought during last year, but I didn't get to try them until this year, so that is why I always say that it's a palette that I tried during this year. Those palettes obviously are not going to include in this video, so even though in this sort of ranking some palettes rank lower than others, these are all palettes that I still do think have a place in my collection, so that is something to consider, because I do know some people do it that they first do the ranking and then they do the declutters, but I like to include palettes in these rankings that actually still have a place in my collection, because obviously if I want to declutter something, then I don't think it makes much sense ranking the palette, because then there is something in the palette that I'm just not feeling it, or the quality of it doesn't match what I like in my eyeshadows, or there's some other reason why I don't want to have it in my collection. Second, this is very subjective opinion, so some palettes that I rank lower or higher, you might have a different opinion of them. I always, of course, love to hear that if there is a palette you for some reason prefer more or less than I do, of course let me know. And obviously I think it would be fun that if you could maybe comment what were your top 3 palettes, and maybe if you had some similar favorites than I did at the end of this video, then that would be very much appreciated. And the last disclaimer, nobody needs this kind of a collection. I have bought most of these with my own money. I have a full paid time job. YouTube is just a hobby for me, and I budget for my makeup purchases, but you don't need this kind of a big eyeshadow collection. You can do obviously with much less. Okay, so there's quite a lot of post-it notes, and it's a good thing that I actually used post-it notes, because otherwise it would be impossible to keep track on these. You will be seeing the number in one corner, and because I do actually have swatches of all of these palettes, because I'm now much more consistent in doing eyeshadow palette swatches and actually saving also the images. So you're gonna be seeing the number and small image of the swatches somewhere on the screen. I'm gonna have to see editing where I'll be able to place stuff. So last place, so on place 35, and unfortunately it's pretty sad to rank this the lowest, because this was a gift from my friend. I did say in the intro that I bought most of these myself. There are a few palettes that I have gotten as gifts from family and friends, but nothing of this has been sent out by the brands. I'm such a, this is obviously a hobby channel, so it's pretty understandable that I don't get anything in PR, but most of this has been bought with my own money, but I will tell which palettes have been gotten as a gift. But last one, so this is the Kiko, this is the Beauty Roar 02 All My Colors. This is pretty old palette. I did get this from my friend during this year. Why this is last, I did discuss this on the review video. Unfortunately for me, the mattes in this one were a letdown, and it was pretty, I was a bit surprised because the mattes actually swatch out pretty well, but because it's a such a small palette, I would all shades to work perfectly. The mattes don't work out, and that kind of takes away quite a lot of diversity that this palette could have potentially had. The shimmer shades work pretty okay, and especially the very the rose gold shimmer you were saying, that is the prettiest shade in this palette, but I still did want to keep this around. I did have this during this year with me during traveling, and it has its uses, but unfortunately this isn't the best that Kiko has produced, and that is the reason why this is on the last place. Then on place 34, so this is the Flower Nose palette, and this is the one that did get to stay in my collection. So this is the 02 Strawberry Milk palette, and this was from their, I think that's still the most recent collection they have done. So why this, what especially put this very down on my ranking was the price point. So these aren't any way or form cheap palettes, and these are £6 palettes, and even though the packaging is very extra in terms of packaging, this was probably one of the best one for the year, but just what is inside, the mattes in these ones are pretty weak, and I'm not buying the excuse that they are C Beauty palettes, so the mattes are what they are, because I do have some K Beauty palettes coming up where the mattes work very well, even though they are on the buildable side. With these ones, the mattes were you had to do very much work with them, and as they still kind of didn't show up. The shimmers in this one were very pretty, but I think considering especially the price point, so when you add the value added tax on top of the sales price of these are almost for €40, and for €40 for six shades, I would expect all of them to work out, so that is the reason why this is ranking relatively low. Then on place number 33, and the 32 is also gonna be from the same brand. So the Morphe palette. So Morphe redid their whole eyeshadow palette range during this year, and which palettes got to stay in my collection were their sort of sixpence. So this first one is the Outer Spice, and while I do think it's an okay formula, I still like it's different from the formula they had previously, but it's still not nothing like to write home about. So I think it like you can get looks with these ones. Why I did keep the sixpence is because they have this sort of bake shades, and if you go through the trouble of using the shades with water or some kind of other liquid, they can be very impactful on your lids. However, the downside of using these bake shades with liquids is that they can be very texturizing. So you can obviously use the shimmers in this one without adding liquids to them, but then the impact, it's not as impactful as it is when you use water or setting spray or something with them. So I do think while these are pretty okay, I still don't think this is as good as some other drugstore formulas that we're gonna see later in this video. Why this is ranking lower than the other Morphe palette that I'm gonna show after this one is that with this one especially there isn't a lot of range in terms of the color story. You are kind of get some kind of like warm tone pinkish linen color story every time you use this one. Then the palette that is a bit higher, so this is the 32, and this is the Rich Glitch palette. So this is the cool tone one, and I genuinely actually did like the kind of like the looks that I got with this one. Surprise, so it's a cool tone palette. I'm a cool tone lover due to my skin undertone, so I can get behind this kind of color story, but just again the formula not as maybe amazing as some people maybe thought made it to sound like when they were initially reviewing this, but you can get a decent looks, and I do have to say this one actually did have something special going on for it. So this kind of white shade is actually pretty nice duochrome, especially considering you are paying drugstore prices. Then we are on number 31, and I think this is the lowest ranking indie palette. This is the palette that hasn't been yet reviewed on my channel, but I did want to include it already in this year's ranking because I have done the demo looks. I do know how I feel about this one, but you are gonna see the full review of this one I think during January once I get other palettes also to my sort of collective review video. And this was such a shame because this is the first one that I tried from this one. So this is the from Simply Brush Cosmetics, and this is the Gingerbread Bakery palette, and the pastels in this one is what is like letting this down, and because the pastels are basically half of this particular palette, I can't like rank this any higher. Also with this matte formula, this is very close to the Nomad formula, but this has a bit of same issues that the Nomad formula is suffering from. However, I do think Nomad still has managed to somehow do maybe a bit better the matte formulation, which is the reason we're gonna see the Nomad palette in higher in this ranking. So with this one, the pastels are very powdery. You have to build them, not a pleasant ride at all to work with them. And then you have these mattes, and I was kind of like thinking that okay, but maybe they're like, or obviously like the pastel little mattes, but I mean you have the neutrals like browns in this one. And with the neutral brown mattes, it's a very soft kind of formula that you have to be very careful in blending out, because you already are kind of missing the contrast in with this one because you are having such a like light pastel tone shades here. I was kind of expecting that okay, but I have to get depth, like I should be able to get depth with these ones. But unfortunately, also the deeper mattes in this one, the formula is so blendable that it's blendable to the point that you are losing pigment, and that is why it was pretty hard to build also depth with this kind of palette, which is something that I do need with my eyeshadow palettes. The shimmers in this one were nice. There were a bit too many toppery-like shimmers for my liking. I would have liked more opaque shimmers, but that is a preference thing. But the shimmers are very pretty with this one. But unfortunately, in terms of the indie palettes that I tried during this year, this I think was the most disappointing one, which is not a good start, especially when you are trying a new brand. Then we are on the place 30, so this is the Catrice Cocoa palette. I do have to say in terms of Catrice, this is like better eyeshadow that we have gotten from them. Catrice has been pretty notorious in terms of being hit and miss brand with their eyeshadow formulas. However, why this is ranking low, it is still a very basic neutral palette. Also the shimmers in this one, the shimmers are quite nice, but they actually are much more toned down once you get them to your eyelids, so they aren't as perhaps sparkly as they initially like look to be when I did the sort of swatch shorts with this one. So this is ranking low purely because of the fact that it is still a pretty like a small palette and there isn't that much you can do with it. But in terms of the fact that if you're looking for good decent eyeshadow from Catrice, this is the palette that I would recommend from them. Then we are on 29, so this is the Bound by the Stars, so this is the quad I got in P. Louise's wedding tint budget box during this spring. In terms of quality, there is nothing wrong with this one. This is actually, I would say, better P. Louise, like the better ones in terms of the eyeshadow P. Louise has produced. But this again is ranking relatively low because you can't do much with this one. You are pretty much stuck with a peach tone look with this one. You are gonna get a very pretty impactful peach tone look, and I do like the shimmer formulas in this one, but just the fact that you don't get a lot of versatility, that's the reason why it's ranking relatively low. Then 28, so this is the Nomad Better Than Palette 07 Berry Fuchsia one. Again, I think this already shows that Asian beauty brands can do good eyeshadow. This is on the side of being a bit more buildable, like matte eyeshadows, so that is why it's ranking a bit lower. Also, it has the adhesive glitter shade, so this one over here, not my favorite kind of eyeshadow to work with. But if you do want to get this one, I don't think, and if you are kind of willing to do a bit of building, I think you are gonna get pretty looks with this one. And I do kind of like that even though it's a smaller palette, you do get a good gradient from light to deep shades with this one. So I think if you are eyeing these Nomad palettes, this is one of the better ones that I would actually get, but it is still ranking relatively low because there were just like other palettes above this one that were much better, and there are still a few things in this one that I wasn't such a big fan of. Then are we on 27? Yes, so this is the Huda Beauty Icy Nude palette. This was Huda's holiday release last year, but I didn't get to try this out until the beginning of this year. So this is this the lowest ranking luxury palette? I think this is, or well, high-end. Yeah, so I think I did discuss on my review that I was a bit disappointed with this one. First of all, there was the one traditional dry, gritty, traditional shimmer. We should not be getting these kind of shimmers anymore, at least during 20, like we are now entering the 2026 year. We have better glitter formulas. Also, there were also some of the other shimmers in this one, they were pretty chunky, something that I did not think we would still get from like, especially these more high-end brands. And then in terms of matte variation, there's a lot of mattes that end up looking quite similar on your eyelids, and then you consider it's a big palette, so with this kind I would expect that there would be like a proper variety with the shades. I do still like the looks that I get with this one, it's just that there isn't like, because some of the shades are quite similar, you kind of at some point start thinking that hey, I've already like kind of gotten this look, even though I have like used different shades. So I think with this one it was just that they kind of maybe needed to go a bit more back to drawing board with this one, maybe do a bit more testing with some of the formulas, and also maybe so they should have swapped out some shades so that this could have gotten more versatility. Then we're getting to the, what are we on, 26. So first one of the two, so this is the Oden's Eye Aloe palette, and I think this one and the next one were these the only Oden's Eye palettes that I bought during this year. I think this is starting to maybe show that where we are at with the brand particular, because Oden's Eye used to be a brand that I actually bought a lot during the year, but yeah, I think this year we have only gotten one. So I did discuss on my review video that this isn't maybe the best quality Oden's Eye has produced. You can get quite nice looks with this one. Why this is ranking where it is first of all maybe because of the color story. So this has the kind of shades that, while I can appreciate occasionally using this kind of color story, this is never going to be a #1 color story because it also has this like almost blue linen purples. But I do like the range you get with this one. You get a nice gradient of lighter shades and deeper shades with this particular color story. But as I said, the quality maybe not the best that Oden's Eye has come out with. It's a decent quality, but for me, because of the color story and because this isn't still the best the brand has come out with, that is why it's ranking where it is. And then place number 25, and this is ranking higher, so this is the Autumn Alva palette. And I do like the color story of this one a bit more. I did have the bit of a oopsie that I did end up, I think, especially during summertime, I did end up getting quite a few palettes that had a bit similar color stories. So that is also the reason that there is a palette that is ranking much higher, that kind of had the color story, but it was maybe a bit more amped up and the formula was a bit better. Again, with this one, it's a decent Oden's Eye quality, but not the best they have come out with. There were also some Dutchies in this one, but I do think in terms of like which one I like most of the seasonal palettes that they launched, because they launched altogether 4 palettes when they did the release. I did like, and I ended up getting the 2, but I did like the color story with this one more. And I have said that I do kind of like that it can be a spring palette, but it can also be a fall palette depending on your like color preferences. Then on spot 24, so this was Glossards' holiday palette during last year, but I didn't again get to try this out until the beginning of January. So this is the Molten Metals palette, and why this is kind of worried is that while I do think actually quality-wise there's nothing wrong with this one, the metallics are, like shimmer shadows in this one are very impactful, and if you have very textured eyelids or you don't like these super power metallic shades on your eyelids, then you're not gonna enjoy this one. But if you really want impactful shimmer shades, then you are probably gonna love this one. But there isn't also a lot of variety with this one. It is still at the end of the day a very basic like neutral palette. But if this is the kind of palette that you like, if you're especially the kind of person that you just want a neutral brown matte on your crease and then a shimmer to top of it, then this could be a very good option to you. But it is kind of here because it's still not the most versatile thing, and there is like quite a bit of limitations what you can do with this one. But in terms of quality, if you are into this sort of very high impactful shimmer eyeshadows in neutral tones, this could be a good option. Then on place number 23 is this one. So this is the Natasha Denona Bloom palette. This was her spring release, though for me this is a summer palette. So I wasn't maybe the most fan of this one, purely because of the reason that first of all, I think with the shimmers we are going backwards. So this was a sort of like throwback to the more like metallic leaning shimmers that Natasha Denona used to do, and not the high impactful shimmers that we, for example, see in the I Need a Nude palette. And this is just maybe this was another palette where we kind of saw that, okay, we are kind of going again back and forth with different kind of shimmer formulas, and this has been a issue with Natasha Denona. Also in terms of the mattes, it seems again that this had again a bit of a different kind of matte formula than some of the other palettes that came before this one. And I think a lot of Natasha Denona fans, me included, we are now kind of at the point where we are like saying that could we please get one consistent matte formula and one consistent very impactful shimmer formula, and we would be happy, and not having the formulas being switched up. Because again, after the palettes that have come out after this one, those again have had another new kind of formula, and it's getting like you're not with Natasha Denona, you don't really know what you are basically getting at this point when you buy a new palette from her. So aside from the fact that we did go back with the shimmer formulas, the mattes were pretty okay with this one. You don't get a lot of variety with this one. That is also why I'm putting this down. However, why this isn't maybe ranking the lowest of lowest is that this is a very sort of nostalgic color story for me. So this is a very similar color story to a Sigma Corda Rosa that has a very special place in my heart, because it used to be an eyeshadow palette that I wore when I got engaged with my husband. And unfortunately the Corda Rosa, it did cause eye issues. This one, no eye issues, so that is also the reason why it is still getting like a bit higher up than other palettes. But not my favorite Natasha Denona release. I was very much like going back and forth, will I declutter this in my declutter, but I thought that because of the color story I still want to keep this around. But not my favorite in terms of formulations. I really wish we could get like, especially with the shimmers, we could get better. So on 22 we have this one. So this is the Creme de la Creme from Glamshop. This was actually the last year's holiday release. In terms of formulas, this is very nice. Glamshop has definitely been upgrading their formulas. This and the other palette that I reviewed along with this one that is actually ranking higher. I think the formulas are pretty nice. Also, I like the brown undertones. This has again a bit different kind of neutral undertones than what we perhaps see usually from brands. Why this is again maybe not as high as some other palettes, the shimmers in this one are these pretty toned down metallic shimmers. I think for some people this actually could be a pretty ideal shimmer formulas, especially for those of you who don't like these high impact shimmers, but I want to have more power with my shimmer formula, so that is probably the reason why this is ranking a bit lower. Then 21 is this one, so this is the Dead Roses from ByBeautyBay. This was their Valentine's palette I think 2 years ago, but they brought it back during this year's Valentine's. So I had very high expectations for this brand. This is perhaps again a brand that I'm ranking a bit lower purely because I was having, based on the hype that this brand has gotten, and then when my expectations weren't met when I tried it. So the matte formula in this one is pretty nice, but these mattes unfortunately are mattes that tend to blend in together. It could also be that with this particular palette, because it is such a purple, red, pink heavy, it could also be about the shades, but I wasn't such, because this was still a pretty expensive palette. I don't want my mattes then blending in together into a one single shade. I want them actually then to show up separately. So that's the first reason. Second reason is that while this has very high impactful shimmers, for me a lot of these did crease. And I can do if a palette has like maybe 1 or 2 shimmers creasing, then it's okay. But with this one, most of the shimmers did crease. Did still end up keeping this around because I do like this sort of pink purple. I'm a sucker for this kind of color story, but I just wasn't as impressed with this particular brand as maybe as some other people have like in social media have made this brand to be. So maybe in the future if ByBeautyBay comes out with a color story that I like again, then I could be open to trying them. But because they are also on the pricier side, I am a bit always more hesitant to then try like everything. If it's a very pricey brand, then I really want to pick and choose. So this one, because I was a bit disappointed in it, it is ranking lower. But I mean, if you are into this kind of like pink color, pink, purple, red Valentine's color story, and you don't especially mind that the shimmers are shimmers that tend to crease a little, then this could be a very nice palette to look into. Then we are already on the top 20. So this is Glamlite Scarfield palette. I got this I think on sale during this year because this is an older one. So why this is ranking may be lower than some other Glamlite palettes is purely because of the color story. It has pretty one-tone color story, not something that I primarily go towards, but I was pretty impressed with this one. The shimmers in this one were very impactful shimmers, and this palette shows that you can do impactful shimmers that don't crease. So these are very impactful high shine shimmers, but they don't crease on my eyelids, so that is already a plus for this one. So this is purely because of color story preference. It's a bit too one-tone, but for summer this is actually something that I would be very into. So if you're still able to like find this maybe on sale because it's getting to be an older Glamlite palette, like try this out. I don't think you're gonna be disappointed. Then we are moving to 19. So this is a new brand that I tried during this year, though not a new brand on the market. So this is LH Cosmetics Blomma palette. So this is a 9-pan palette. And surprisingly, why I'm ranking this, I would say actually more higher than I expected, is that actually there was surprisingly a lot of versatility with this one. Like initially you would think that okay, it's some kind of a pink look that you're gonna get with this one, and yeah, you are, but you can get kind of also like a more neutral leaning look and more of a purple leaning look with this one. The shimmers are not gonna be these sort of very high shine indie shimmers. It's a more traditional shimmer formula, but all of these shimmers, they do kind of have a sort of like flip to that, so they do have a bit of a shift to them, even though they kind of maybe look a bit of basic in the pan. Why this is still like on place 19 and not any higher is that these are pretty expensive for being 9 pans, and especially because the cardboard packaging, it feels pretty basic cardboard packaging. So the full price, some of these are almost like 50 euros, which I think is too much money. You can usually get LH Cosmetics, at least in our retailers, usually they are on some kind of offer, and I would never pay the full price for these 9 pans. I would look into like for a -20 or even 25% off from these ones. And I do think then these are maybe a bit more worth it, because I do think the formula itself, it's pretty like stellar formula, but it's just that for the like full price tag that these are, they are not like worth it. Then on place 18, this is actually the sort of like all shimmer quad. So this is the Aurora, and this is actually also something that was launched during this year. And this is sort of LH Cosmetics variation of these like indie duochrome shimmers. I actually think that if you want to try this like sort of like duochrome shimmers, but you don't want to try these indie brands because the shimmers are chunky, this is actually a very smooth shimmer formula. I do think this is a shimmer formula that would actually work for most eyelid types. Again, why this is ranking a bit then lower than maybe some other palettes is purely price point. So these again, these are even like, I think these are around like 45 euros. But again, I would like just like wait for a sale or some kind of discount coupon on these ones and then buy these with a discounted price. And again, the cardboard packaging really doesn't warrant the price tag for me. But if you are looking for a like smoother duochrome shimmers and you don't want to buy them from indie brands but from a brand that is available on like more like mainstream retailers, then I would maybe look into these ones, because I do think in terms of quality these are pretty nice. Then on place 17 we have a new brand for me, which was Artitude Cosmetics. So this is the Ink and Roses palette. This was their Valentine's palette, but I got this during Monolith Shops. I think it was on their summer sale. The matte quality in this one was pretty impressive. The matte quality I think is pretty close to if you have tried from Cosmic Beauty, and we all know that at least currently Cosmic Beauty seems to be one of my favorite indie brands. Why this is still, like, I think this could have been higher, but for me what surprised me is that all the shimmers did crease on me. I was kind of expecting that, for example, the shimmer like this one over here that you can see on the pan, it's a bit chunkier. I was kind of thinking that, okay, yeah, like a couple of these might crease, but actually even the smoother shimmers, so for example this one over here or the golden one over here, those also did crease on me quite badly. So due to the creasing issue, I kind of had to knock this one down, but I do kind of think the matte quality was very superb, again considering that Artitude isn't that expensive for an indie brand, and if you live in Europe, like Artitude is a UK based brand, so you can order this from directly from UK, but you can also order this from Monolith Shop, so you have like several places to get this particular brand from. And I do think this is a brand worth to try if you've been looking into like new indie brands to try out, because I do think the quality is nice. And as I said, with not all people do that like shimmers crease, it's just that particularly with my particular lip type it can happen with some shimmer formulas. But overall I do kind of like the grungy Valentine's color story. This had to go for it. It's just that maybe with the shimmers I would have expected them to maybe last a bit better on me. Then on 16, am I really gonna rank this so highly? Apparently I am. So not should be known as Starlight mini palette. I got this from my Sephora haul when I was traveling in Czech Republic during this summer, and I can maybe show this closer. So this is a very basic like neutral 5 pan, but I might have enjoyed this more than the Bloom palette. I think these are all shades that if you have a lot of Notoshinde known as big palettes, I think all of these are repeat shades. I don't think there were any original shades in this one, but I just like this much more than the Bloom palette. And I think this was a surprisingly bit of a interesting like 5 pan color story, because it's kind of like a smoky warm tone palette is how I would like describe this particular color story with. So if you've been eyeing this particular 5 pan, at least with this one, I think like this is a good color story if you are very into these 5 shades. Why am I still ranking this so highly? Yeah, I think this shows that maybe this like surprised me a bit more when I was like, because I don't think I had that high of a expectations for this particular palette, but I did actually end up liking this quite a lot. Okay, then on place 15, so this is the Glamshop's Z FIOLETEM palette. So this was their fall release last year, but again I didn't have time to try this out until the beginning of this year. And in terms of like packaging design, collection design, I think this was the best that we have seen from Glamshop in terms of collections yet, from the like how things were curated, how this color story was done. I do kind of like this sort of like, it's a purple color story, but you actually have much more than just purples going for it. So you have this row of purples in the middle, but then you actually have like a lot more other shades. So you can get a purple look with this one, but you can also get some neutral looks or some like other grungy colorful looks with this one. And what I did like about this one is that we did get these more like high shine shimmers, but these are again shimmers that don't crease on me. They actually stay put on my list through the whole day. And yeah, I just like the variety of this one. Still maybe not like my absolute favorite color story, because it goes to the more grungier side of color stories, and we all know that I'm maybe more fan of my pastels and colorful shades. But I do think as a fall release and as an overall, if you are into this kind of color story, I do think the quality of this one was very nice. And I still think the packaging, like, this is the best that I think we have seen from Glamshop yet. And we are continuing with the grungy team. So on place number 14, we are having the Twilight Team Jacob palette. I'm not a Twilight fan. I have like said this now many times on my channel. The teen movies that came during this time, I just found them very cringy altogether. But even though I'm not a fan of the franchise, I have to say this is... Glamlite was being pretty much on fire in terms of like improving their quality, especially with this particular collection. Like, their shimmers and mattes were pretty good, especially considering the price point, but there was something extra good with this one. Why this is still ranking lower than maybe some other palettes is purely for the color story. So this goes to the grungier side of color stories. For me, there is like fall season, winter season is the time of year that I like to gravitate towards these more muted color stories, but for me this to be a perfect palette, we would have maybe needed maybe a bit more like variety and color. This looks to be maybe a bit more warmer than it actually is because it has a couple of orangey leaning browns, but actually this was relatively cool toned when I did use it. But in terms of quality, this was pretty superb. So if you are into the color story of this one, I would actually maybe try this from Glamlite because the quality was just a chef's kiss. Then the same reason why this is again maybe not, we are already on 13, yeah. So same reason why this maybe didn't make it quite into the top 10 of my palettes. This is the Ensley Rain Wolf Moon palette. I got this from their Black Friday sale. This was their winter release actually during this year. So again, because it is a pretty grey leaning color story, I adore my cool tone palettes, but I do need a bit more than just greys for it to be a perfect palette for me. But generally I did like all the looks I came out with this one. Some of the shimmers in this one did crease, so I think especially this blue shimmer over here, it was a bit on the more emollient side, but I was like, and maybe we could have gotten it like switched out because this did have bit with the mattes. There were like 3 greys that end up looking quite similar once you got them to the eyelids. So there were some things that I would have maybe switched around with this one and we would have already gotten quite a lot more variety, but I still do think that I actually did end up liking all the looks that I did with this one, and I did like the quality overall, even if we had some things that I would have maybe changed. Then we are on palette number 12. So, Nomad's Fairy Tale Europe. If I would be rewarding the best packaging, this palette would get it. This is very like Disney princess-esque, so we are getting brownie points for that one. The only reason why this isn't ranking higher is the row of mattes here. So, Nomad's matte formula, it seems to be one of the softer matte formulas, and for beginners this could actually be a very ideal indie palette to try out. Also in terms of pricing, Nomad is pretty reasonably priced for being an indie brand. The shimmers in this one were absolutely beautiful and very sparkly. With the mattes, however, they are almost too soft to the point that you are kind of, when you blend them, you are kind of blending the pigment away. And especially when you are looking to get depth with these deeper shades, you really did have to be a bit careful when layering them and then blending out, because as I said, that if you did blend out a bit too much, then you ended up losing the pigment. So that is my sort of only complaint with this one. Additionally, it only had a row of neutral mattes. I think this would have ranked also much higher if we would have gotten some more colorful shades. But overall, if your idea of a colorful makeup look is neutral matte to the crease and colorful shimmer, you are gonna love this one. And I do think, considering the price point and everything, this brand has a lot of going for it. Just that the matte formula is perhaps not maybe my favorite because of the fact that it almost is a bit like too blendable. Spot number 11, so Desert Haze. I haven't been buying that many ByBeautyBay palettes, which has been mostly due to the color stories, but this one, when I saw it, I thought that okay, I really have to try this one out. This is the perfect beginning of the fall palette for me. It has this very punchy, orangey leaning brown tones, and then we do have some like muted green tones, and then we get some yellow. Not all the shades were a hit with this one, but I do think generally overall this is one of the better formulas we have gotten from ByBeautyBay, with especially these limited edition palettes. There's been some hits and miss in terms of formulas. This one had a beautiful formula, especially also the shimmer shades very pretty, and most of the mattes work out. With some of the deeper mattes there were we had bit of blending issues with them. I think if you are still eyeing this one, and ByBeautyBay, like constantly, ByBeautyBay is like a UK-based online retailer, but they have their like in-house brand. You can get most of these palettes, especially now that they're running, I think they're like after Christmas sale. I think you're able to maybe get this one on discount. So I think if you are being just looking for a warm tone palette to try out from them, I would like start with this one. I don't think you're gonna be disappointed. And then we are officially getting to the top 10. So this was again the first time me trying this brand. So this is Klarity Kosmetics, and this is the Klarity Rain palette. I think this again is an older palette that I got during this year from Monoshop's sale. I think this was actually a good first time palette trying from this brand, because I was able to try a range of their colors. We got more colorful shades, we got more neutral tone shades, and we got shimmers. Only thing why I'm putting this down is that it's a matte heavier palette, and one of the shimmers is a dot, so it's this one. This taupey shimmer over here, because it's almost like dealing with loose glitters, it's just like messy to work with. I had like shimmer streaks under my eyes after I had used the shimmer because it was so loose. I don't know what happened with the formulations. All the other shimmers in this one work very well, and I do think that if you're just looking for a one and all palette from this brand, I think this would be a good palette to start with, because I think you are getting such a good range of colors and formulas, and you kind of get a good idea what this brand is about if you try this particular palette. So on spot number 9, and I think this is a good sign that Makeup Revolution is doing something right, even though apparently financially they're not doing so well, which is kind of a shame, because they are, like, I think they have been doing all right things with their formulas. So this is the Celestial Icon palette. I tried altogether 3 icon, no, actually I tried 4 icon palettes during this year. Not all of them were hits, which kind of shows that there are still variations, but with this one I am rewarding this for the fact that this did surprise me in a positive manner. So initially when I was kind of looking at this, I was thinking that we have got a lot of like toppers that look a bit similar. Let's see how this is gonna work out. But actually all of the shimmer toppers, when you combine them with different mattes and other shades in this palette, you are kinda, I was able to get 3 distinctly different looks with this one, which wasn't the expectations when I went into this one. I wasn't actually like expecting to like this as much as I did. The only thing that I still don't like about this one are the cream shades. So unfortunately these cream shades, they are not the kind of creams that, at least for me, help the longevity of my eyeshadow. They actually make it worse. They cause the eyeshadow to crease, so I just ignore the cream shades altogether in this one. But if you are looking for this kind of cool toned leaning, blue, purple, neutral leaning like palette at a drugstore, I think this one is actually something that I would recommend trying, and there is like generally something pretty surprising about this one when you start combining the shades. Still not a primary color story for me, but as I said, this did surprise me very positively, and that is why it's actually like ranking higher. I usually do reward brands a bit in my rankings if they surprise me positively, and I also do punish them in my ranking if they don't meet my expectations, as we have seen maybe with some of the palettes that I've already shown in this one. Okay, then the palette that I had so many high expectations, and this is probably the first dot that I had from this particular brand. So on spot number 8 we have the Cosmic Beauty The Lovers palette. First of all, the packaging design, 10 out of 10. And oh god, is the green shade gonna break? It is looking pretty. I have to repress that one. So this would have probably ranked as my first palette. Oh, and by the way, from Cosmic Beauty, I do have their like newest palette, or not the newest, but the second newest one, the sort of like, also, which is kind of also tarot themed. I don't remember the name of it, but I do have it. I did manage to get it before Christmas, and I do have a swatch video on my channel, but there's no way I have enough time to try that before holiday, so we are gonna see that on next year's ranking. So if you're just Starlight Society now, yeah. So the Starlight Society palette, I do have the palette, but I haven't got time to try it out, so it's gonna be featuring on next year's ranking. But this one would have probably been one of my favorite palettes this year. But unfortunately, I don't know what happened with the pastel mattes, and that's such an odd thing, because Cosmic Beauty actually became famous in the indie community for being able to produce these colorful pastel leaning, but also like generally colorful shades at such a decent like price point compared to some other indie brands. The shimmers in this one are the best that the brand has ever produced, and I still like why this is still ranking relatively high is because once I do layer the pastel leaning shades, the looks are pretty, and I adore the shimmers in this one. I adore this color story. It's just that I don't know what happened with the pastel formulations. I think a lot of people did like the quality of this one, so I don't know, did it just happen that I got a dot palette? That is always possible when you mass produce palettes, that there's a batch or individual palettes that aren't the same quality as others. But for me, I think if the pastel mattes in this one would have worked as well as their pastel mattes in their other palettes that I've tried, this would have been the #1 palette. But unfortunately, because the pastel mattes in this one, there are so many of them, I do have to make that consideration when I rank this against some other palettes. But in terms of color story, the shimmers, this is one of my favorites, but unfortunately the consistency of this one just didn't match the other Cosmic Beauty palettes that I have tried. Then number 7, I think this is the most highest ranking like K-beauty or Asian beauty palette. So this is the Dasique, and this is the 01 Sugar Brownie. So this is a very basic neutral palette, but I said on my review of this one that this palette shows, even with Asian beauty brands, that you don't have to do these adhesive glitter shades to get impressive shimmers. This has one of the smoothest, butteriest shimmer formula that looks very impactful once you layer it on your eyelids. The mattes in this one were like butter, and I was just so... I liked all the looks that I got with this one, even though it's a very basic neutral palette. Depending where you get this from, if you get this from K-beauty specialized retailer sites, you can get this maybe around 20 or even 15 euros. I did end up paying a bit more this one because I got this one in our local K-beauty stores, but then again I didn't have to wait for shipping because I obviously got it in store. So you might be able to get this on a quite of a good deal, but depending like again where you buy this from. But if you've been eyeing this particular palette from Dasique, I would like get it because I think this is the quality of this one was very beautiful. Then the highest ranking, I think, drugstore palette. So this is the Moira's, what was this one called? Lover Starlight. So this again, maybe we're having this kind of tarot theme. Only thing I'm not a fan of this one, with these ones is the thick packaging. But in terms of the color story, like this again, I said it on my review, don't buy this if you want to get a pink palette because the background makes this look more pink than it actually is. But if you're looking for this beautiful cool toned pink leaning mauvish neutral palette at a drugstore pricing, this goes around 24 euros, so it's not the cheapest of drugstore, but considering what else is available on European drugstores, I do think this is the best you're able to get in terms of quality. The mattes are exceptionally buttery, pigmented. I don't know how Moira does it with their price point. The shimmers are beautiful. Some of the shimmers are, or maybe like actually a lot of them are maybe a bit more like this almost metallic leaning shimmers rather than these high shine sparkle shimmers, but I do know that a lot of people also can appreciate these kind of shimmers. So I think altogether, if you're just looking for a very stellar quality makeup at a more affordable price point, I do think Moira's palette are something that you should look into, and I do think this color story altogether, it's also a color story that I like a lot because it is this sort of moorishly and cool tone palette, so that's why it's also ranking relatively high. And I think this is one of the like, this was for the longest time was running as my #1 most like colorful palette for this year, but then there was a palette that kind of dethroned it at the end of the year. So this is the Whispering Woods palette from Ensley Rain. This was their summer release this year, and this is such a it's such a beautiful color story. So this was kind of the amped up version of the Oden's Alva Autumn palette, and I did kind of compare these in the sort of review video that I did. Why this is still like what dethroned this was in the end that some of these shimmers do crease on me, so it's not formula wise a perfect palette for me, but a lot of the shimmers were still also weren't creasing, so this is kind of one of those Ensley Rain palettes that some of the shimmers are more emollient, some of them are not. And the mattes in this one work very beautifully, no issues with them, and I do kind of like the range. You get some greens, you get some purples, but then you have some also warm tone shades in this one, so I think overall this just has a lot of range to it, and I do, as I said, this was almost ranking as one of the highest like ranking colorful palettes, but we are gonna see one palette that did dethrone this. But I think that if you've been eyeing this one and if you don't mind that there are like maybe few shimmers that can crease, I think you are gonna love this kind of like quality of this one, and I do think that in terms of color stories this was one of the best colorful indie color stories that I got into my collection this year, and it was almost the highest ranking of the colorful palettes, but as I said, something did dethrone it. Why am I ranking this on #4? Well, I did like this a lot. So this is the Patrick Tar Major Dimensions eyeshadow palette. So this is the OG one. So this is the like more neutral leaning. So I should be not ranking this highly, but darn it, I liked all looks I got with this one. This even has like 2 cream shades, but with this one, this is the kind of cream formula that I actually like, where it actually helps in terms of blending and setting the eyeshadows. The cream shadows in this one, they don't do like make your eyeshadow crease or do anything funny. They actually help in terms of creating your eye looks. The shimmers in this one were very beautiful, and the mattes in this one, I did discuss quite extensively that I do think in terms of like high-end matte formulas, this is so far seems to be now like my favorite. It's such a nice matte formula to work with where you get pigment, but it's very easy to work with, and overall it's a very basic neutral palette. Do I think it's a bit overpriced? I necessarily would not pay the full price for this one. I was able to get this on Cold Beauty with a -20% off discount code, so I think for -20% off from the full price this was pretty much worth it. But yeah. Is this very basic? Yes, but I do think in terms of like quality and just being very effortless, and the fact that I don't really have to think about it when I work with this one, and I will know that every time the looks will come out great. I do think it was worth it, and if you've been eyeing this one, I would recommend it. Only thing I do say, a lot of people say that these don't necessarily have the best preservatives, so I'm kind of keeping an eye on this one, especially with the shimmers, and seeing that are they gonna grow mold at some point, because this seems to be a trend with some of these Patrick Tar palettes, but I would hope that at least mine would not start growing at least like I can like understand maybe after a couple of years that might start happening, but I hope this will last in my collection because I do think in terms of quality very nice quality, and I think one of the better ones in terms of like high-end formulations. Then number 3, so Glaminatrix is nearly natural, and this is the revamped version because they used to have this palette in a bit different format. So my first palette from Glaminatrix was the Rich Romantic one, which I did end up decluttering because unfortunately not just one but all the shimmers creased, and the shimmers creased so badly that I basically had no shimmer left at the end of the day. And I was pretty disappointed because in terms of color story, the Rich Romantic was a pretty much perfect color story for me. Then I decided to give them another go, and I do have to say with this one we have no creasing issues. These are the most, like, I'd say in terms of longevity, these are the best indie shimmers that I have tried. It's also a very smooth shimmer formula. This is a shimmer formula that I would again say that a lot of beginners would enjoy. And especially if you want to go into indie eyeshadow but you don't want to get these very emollient shimmers, I think you would enjoy these a lot. They are also very sparkly high shine shimmers, and I think if you are someone who enjoys your neutral palettes with a twist, I think you would like this one a lot. Why this is ranking number 3 and not maybe number 1 or 2 is that there were like some shades that are maybe a bit too similar to be in a one palette. There were like few mattes and few shimmers where I was kind of feeling like that they looked a bit too similar, and with a big, if you are giving me this kind of big palette, I kind of expect that all the shades bring something unique to the table. But still I would say from Glaminatrix, if you've been eyeing this is a very great quality, and I think a lot of eyeshadow users would enjoy this particular formula. So then the sort of like my number 2 palette, and this was the like best colorful palette that I tried during this year. So Cosmic Beauties, this is the season palette. Again, I went back and forth during last Christmas because this was their last year's holiday release. That do I want to get it? I ended up skipping it, and then I got this on Black Friday sale from Nudes during this year, and I think I made the right decisions. So unlike with the Lovers palette, no issues with the matte formulas. Okay, there was the one, I think, purple that I did say that it was one of the like pastel linen purples that I had to build a bit more, but otherwise all the shades in this, colorful shades in this one work a bit. The second reason why this is like maybe number 2 and not number 1 is that this particular shimmer, it's a bit of a crumblier shimmer, and then this particular shade over here, which is this sort of jewel toned multichrome, this did crease a little bit on me, but those are pretty minor complaints because otherwise this is pretty much a perfect palette in terms of formula and in terms of variety. You can go neutral with this one, you can go colorful with this one. One other thing that is ranking this for number 2 is the fact that the green row for me is a bit of a difficult row to combine with the other shades in this one. I can pretty much like combine the sort of raspberry row, the purple row, and the more orangey leaning neutral row, but the green row is something that is causing me a bit of issues in terms of mixing, but at least then I have the issue that I can do also all green look with this one, even though my creativity maybe isn't enough to do like complete like mixing look. So it's almost a perfect colorful palette for me, but there was the number 1 palette was just, I think, because it just filled all the boxes even better. It was a pretty tight competition, but as I said, there were a few things that put this on the number 2 spot, but those are very minor things. I do adore this color story a lot, and I'm pretty happy that I did end up getting this one, even though it took me almost a year to make the decision. So the number 1 palette, I don't think anyone is surprised, so nothing beat this one. So this is the Neutrals palette. As I said, if the Lovers palette would have had all the shades working very well, we would have gotten a bit of different result. But I did discuss that this is the palette that inspires me endlessly. So this one is something that my brother got me as a Christmas present during last year, but again, due to my filming schedules, I wasn't able to try this out until the beginning of 2025. There's like, this is like, I have no complaints about this one. The matte shades work perfectly, the shimmer shades work perfectly. Yeah, these are maybe not the high shine shimmers that were in the Lovers palette, but I don't mind these. For me, these are shimmery enough, and it's such a beautiful palette, and it's the like kind of like neutral palette with a twist where I feel that all the shades have a purpose in this one. You do get a bit of range, we do get a bit of olive, there's a bit of yellow, I think there is like there's the one red like multichrome or duochrome in this one. So you do kind of get like other than you have the option to go neutral, but you can do a bit of pop of a muted color with this one. It's just such a beautiful neutral palette, and I do hope the brand will keep this in their like line at least as long as they are able to, because I do think a lot of people would enjoy this, and for a lot of people, I think if a person would ask me that what is the cosmic beauty palette that I should try first, then I would maybe first ask them that do you want something more colorful or something more neutral, but I do think for a lot of people this could be a good first palette to try from the brand, and yeah. As I said, nothing did beat this one, and when I just look at this, it just makes my heart flutter, which that there isn't a lot of palettes in my collection that cause that kind of emotion for me, but this one is one of those palettes that you would basically like. I think that if I would suddenly lose all of my eyeshadow collection, this is one of the first palettes that I would actually rebuy to my collection, because they're like, it's realistic to say that with this kind of an eyeshadow palette collection, and aside from like all of these palettes that I've just featured, I obviously have older palettes in my drawers. There are a lot of them that I would be very sad to lose, but not a lot of them are palettes that I would go rebuying, because most likely something newer that is similar would have come to the market. But with this one, this is one of those palettes that I would genuinely like go out and buy again if I would suddenly lose it, and that I think tells quite a lot how much I like about this one. But yeah, that was the last palette that I had for this big end of the year ranking. That was it. That was my end of the year palette ranking done. As I said in the intro, comment down below maybe your top 3 palettes that you tried during this year. If you like this video, push the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell button if you want to get notifications from future content. You can also find me with the same nickname, Makeup Hedgehog on Instagram. I hope you see you in that video. Bye bye.